This might be a surprise on this list as I go through my top 10 favorite movies of the year. Number 3 on this list is a very divisive film that I loved called The Whale, based on a play entitled The Whale, written by Samuel D. Hunter, who also wrote the screenplay for this movie. So it's interesting. Sometimes sometimes people aren't very good at adapting their own work into a different medium. I think that Hunter did a great job in this one, directed by Darren Aronofsky, who is probably the biggest name in this movie, although maybe Brendan Fraser is now that he's had this comeback story. Definitely a divisive movie. I believe it's in the 60s on Rotten Tomatoes, which I have to say, this is what I hate about Rotten Tomatoes, is the fact that it makes, the whole point of Rotten Tomatoes is it's basically made movies like the goal is to appeal to the most people possible. That's not the goal. You're not supposed to appeal to everybody. Sometimes you're supposed to appeal to only a select group of people, and therefore other people aren't going to like it. That doesn't make it a worse movie. That makes it a very good movie. Like Synecdoche, New York has like a 60% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's a masterpiece, but it's not going to appeal to everybody. That's fine. And if you're one of the people who it didn't appeal to, that's also fine. Film is subjective, but it's more of a Rotten Tomatoes rant I'm going on than about The Whale here. I get why some people didn't like this movie, and I legitimately think that there are some very valid. I don't think that like you're wrong for not loving this movie. I totally understand why you wouldn't love it necessarily. For some people, wouldn't. For one, I mean, it all takes place in an apartment. It's not necessarily a movie where there's a lot of action happening. It's also a movie where I think you could talk about there's not like an allegory there. You could argue, what is the point of this movie? I think the point is the actual themes they're talking about. And again, I think the other thing is you could argue there's not a ton of subtext. It pretty much just tells you what's happening, which is very play-like, I feel like, but it kind of worked for me. I kind of found that fun about a movie that sort of is just saying straight up what's happening. Yeah, sure, I love subtext. I love subtext if you watched this channel a decent amount, but you don't need that necessarily. So, again, performances are fantastic, as Hong Chow and Brendan Fraser both got nominated. Fraser, for a while, seemed like he was a lock to win it. I still think he's going to win the Oscar, but it seems like there's some debate now, which as that wasn't the case earlier. Again, there's 4 characters in this movie, which is just, again, it's a very small movie, but in a film like this, I actually think that's a feature, not a bug. I think that the movie itself, the way the plot of the movie very quickly is Brendan Fraser is a character who is suffering from obesity and suffering heavily to the point where he gets a diagnosis that he is going to be dead by the weekend. That's how the movie starts. So we're already starting off with a tough tone. This is not a movie that you want to watch if you don't like sad movies. I mean, this gets to some very dark places, and that's what I like about it. But to me, it never felt. Some people said it felt exploitative. I never got that vibe. To me, it never felt that way. To me, it always felt like these are real things that are happening. This exists in the world. These are things that go on, and we can just if we're not making art about it, we're basically pretending it doesn't happen. I think that's kind of the why this movie was made. But it's Brendan Fraser and kind of his regrets, and he's not a just wholesome, likable guy. He's not, again, it deals in the gray area. Everywhere across the board, it deals in the gray area. Maybe I'll get into spoilers in a second and talk about exactly that. But, he's at times delusional. He's at times very likable. But sometimes what makes him likable also makes him, very unlikable. There's maybe one of the grossest scenes I've ever seen, but also gross for several reasons. There's sort of this binge eating scene, which is gross on the surface level, but also like heartbreaking and very the story makes you very sad at that moment as well, intentionally so there's different twists throughout the screenplay. I love the screenplay and the way it worked. I definitely think it probably fits better on a play, but I think worked in a movie version as well. It was a movie that everything it was trying to do worked for me, and if I can, if I'm watching a movie and feeling all those emotions throughout and thinking all those different thoughts throughout, that's worth going to the theater for me. So I give it a 10 out of 10, but I understand why some people maybe didn't love some of the aspects of it. Again, film is subjective. Let's get into spoilers now, and let's talk about what exactly worked for me, and why, I think the main thing I want to talk about is kind of the characters themselves, because again, 4 characters, they really had time to to flush these characters out. And kind of like I said, every character tries to accomplish things and tries to do the right thing, but they kind of fail at what they're trying to do. Like Brandon Fraser, sort of his thing is he doesn't go to the doctor even though he has money, because he wants to give the rest of his money to his daughter. But his daughter doesn't really need the money as much as she needs a father. So it's like he's trying to do the right thing. He's trying to be nice, but it's not working. You have his friend who is, giving him all this food, and while she's trying to be nice, just make sure he has meals and is able to live, she's also enabling him because she's getting him all this unhealthy food. You also have a kid who constantly knocks on the door, named Thomas, who is this missionary guy, and he's trying to get Charlie to find God, but that's not what actually would make Charlie happy, and it's actually part of what drove Charlie into this depression with the death of his boyfriend. And it's talked about how while he was always a big guy in the movie, he wasn't. Kind of the extreme obesity happened after the death of his boyfriend. And then you have the Ellie character, which is Charlie's daughter in this, where she comes across as terrible, but also like you get why she's this edgy teen who is doing all these awful things. You totally understand why he's doing that why she is the way she is, because of the childhood that she had. And the one thing that, one of the scenes I loved about it is it is left ambiguous, but she, ends up, quote unquote, helping get Thomas back into being a missionary. But it seemed like she was doing it in a way where she was trying to get him in trouble. And Charlie assumes that it's a positive. He assumes that she did it because she's nice. And it's almost like he's assuming that because he wants that to be the case, even though seems unlikely. It's given what we know about Ellie, she seems like she's probably just doing bad stuff, which is just, again, a very unique topic to go on. And it's just a unique story in general about Charlie as a whole. Like, one thing that really worked for me was there would be moments when Charlie would start to laugh. And like there was a moment where his daughter writes she writes something down, and it ends up being a haiku. And so he sees it and he thinks it's funny, so he starts to laugh. But then as he laughs, he starts coughing, and it hurts him. It's like even like getting happiness and laughing actively hurts him, and that's such like a tragic thing to have happen. But like it does happen to people. Like these are things that happen to people, and these are real people in the world that suffer from not just like obesity, severe obesity like he has, but just diseases in general. Like these kind of things do happen, and that's why I was really really impressed by it. And again, performances were just incredible across the board. All 4 performances absolutely worked. Screenplay worked, directing worked. It's my number 3 movie on the year. I know it's divisive. I know not everyone loves it. I love it, though. But that's my thoughts on it. What did you guys think? Have you seen The Whale? Do you disagree with me? Let's argue in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.